Welcome to Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery, a conversation held at the intersection of substance abuse, mental health, and everyday living. Your hosts, Marc Regala and Justin Wolf, bring both professional expertise and personal understanding to the table. So welcome to the conversation. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. Joined as always by my co-host, Marc Regala. And we have our guest returning for the second time today, Kelsey Dunbar. So, thanks for joining, guys. Marc, as always, you know what we're all waiting for. Let's get that update in.
Happy Labor Day weekend. Kids are back in school. 3 more weeks. Basically 3 more weeks of summer, and the fall will be in the air. Where the hell did the year go?
Yeah, well, some people think summer couldn't end fast enough for the kids to get back in school.
Oh, I'm sure you're one of them.
I mean, now you're just making assumptions, Marc. But yes, I enjoy them having structured activities out of the house on a Monday through Friday basis, if that's what you're implying.
We won't talk about the time I call you and I hear the kids screaming in the background and I hear the stress in your voice.
Oh my, it's like Lord of the Flies in my house. I'm just glad each day I can walk out and say I survived. So here we are. Oh, but I mean, we're here today, Kelsey and Marc. I think we're here to really kind of acknowledge and recognize just the great work that you two have done together, releasing the Suffer to Tougher book. And it's an incredible testament here. And when we talk about this book, this is a raw, real, and unfiltered look at what it truly looks like to rebuild your life from the inside out. And I mean, I was reading through it, and just the personal stories that you guys share, that you echo throughout, of just, what it looks like in addiction, trauma, food addiction, and just combating and acknowledging the shame that's present, and how all of that can come together and just manifest physically. And I think the really powerful part of what you guys were able to create and put your minds together to really craft here was that this is not a traditional fitness book. It's a mental health and emotional transformation guide wrapped up in a fitness narrative. And I think for those that have kind of turned in and listened to our podcast in the past before, I know it might be shocking to hear just Marc's passion for exercise and diet that just comes out. And I think this book really kind of captures this beautifully and kind of gives it a really accessible manual for people out there living their lives in the day in and day out, to kind of get those, to have access to those resources and those tools that can really make an impact on an individual's life. And so I just want to say thank you guys for crafting that, creating this, and really putting the energy into sharing this with the public.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'll kind of open up to you guys, kind of ask, share what kind of drove this? What was the inspiration that really kind of spoke to you that really went into creating this book?
A lot of it happened the previous time that I was on the podcast, where you kind of gave me an opportunity to share my story, and which, Marc and I had a conversation previous, and between that and the podcast, we understood real quickly how our thought process aligns in terms of the kind of coaching that we do, where his has always been more towards the addiction and recovery side of things. My stuff has always been more towards the people who suffer from food addiction and depression, anxiety, things of that nature. And, we were kind of comparing coaching notes, so to speak, and to be like, okay, so what do you use to help your people, or what advice do you give? And the stories were completely the same, with the people who've been the most successful using the same exact tools, the same resources, the same points. And we were like, man, so really what we're doing kind of fits anybody who's going through any kind of mental illness could help their recovery journey with the same concepts. And so we're like, you know what? That would probably make a pretty good book. And
Mm-hmm.
so after the podcast, we kind of talked. We were like, yeah, that kind of would, wouldn't it? And so, the way that we always coach the people that we work with to, to take action, do something, whether it's a small step or a big leap, but just put something into action. And so we were like, well, this will be a good opportunity for us to show what that looks like. We're going to put this into action. And here we are 2 months later talking about our book release. And during our release, we were number one in 3 categories for the new release categories. We were shooting for bestseller. We got to 18th, so we did pretty good. But I mean, part of it was we didn't even really get to do much of a lead up launch because we just wanted to get this book out there and get it into people's hands so that they could benefit from it. That I mean, might have been what kept us from getting to bestseller, but it was more important for us to get this resource out there than to, what kind of accolades we could earn from the book itself. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, for one, even though Kelsey and I know each other from high school, that was pretty much it. I knew his name. We would say hallway, and that was it. 30 something years go by, I didn't know anything about him. And there was a gentleman that was from his graduating class that I helped on the recovery side with some addictive issues or what have you. And that particular gentleman, I had a lot of personal conversations, and I kind of ran him through, what I would suggest. And he had a personal relationship with Kelsey. And early on, he kept saying, "You really need to speak to Kelsey. You really need to speak to Kelsey because your guys' views and your guys' beliefs are pretty much spot on." And then Kelsey would post something on Facebook, and he would tag me. And then I would post something on Facebook, and then he would tag Kelsey. And that's kind of how Kelsey and I started talking. And it's just kind of weird how it just came to fruition. But I didn't know anything about his story. I didn't know he was a fitness coach. I didn't know that he was working with people like with various food addictions on the mental health side. I didn't know, as it was alluded to in the last podcast, that he struggled on the mental health side, his upbringing and things like that. So really, just everything just lined up perfectly. Um, and the thing about it was, and Justin, you and I talked about this late last year. Like, I really wanted to write a book, but the vision that I had, truthfully, was going to be more my personal story.
Mm-hmm.
As we've progressed over like the past year, there's just a wave right now that is just building up, on the mental health side as well as the addiction side and the alcoholism side. And I'm pretty active in the community. And when you wake up during the week and you have 8 to 10 either Facebook messages on Messenger or text from people asking for help, for people asking guidance, and on the weekends it's much more. And I'm one person and I'm busy during the day with my regular job and so forth. There's only so many people I can call back. There's only so many people I can touch. So when we started talking, it's like, and you guys use this you guys said this earlier, it's a resource guide. To me, it was perfect. There's only so many people that I can touch on an individual basis, but if we could put something in writing, that's kind of the blueprint of what we believe in that has worked with us and work with some of the people that we've worked with, why wouldn't we do that as a resource guide to give somebody some guidance? And that's pretty much what we've done. And it's the success, in my opinion, has been great so far. We've had a couple book signings. Well, we had three book signings. We had two like private ones that we organized because people were coming to us wanting to meet and buy merchandise to support mental health and so forth. And then we had one at a little bookstore, Anderson's over here in Downers Grove. So it's been a ride, that's for sure.
That's incredible. And I think as you're kind of talking about kind of creating this guide that people have access to, they can really kind of just, you know, read it when they need it and really kind of turn to that as a resource to support them on their journey. What's kind of like that core message or the principle that you hope readers take away from your book?
Yeah, I mean, I like to say that, Suffer to Tougher is where rock bottom becomes your launch pad. So it's almost like that book doesn't really hit you unless you've been to where, we want people to start from. And that's why when you're taking a couple of personal stories like Mark's and my own, I think that helps people in a way that, therapy and, group coaching and things like that, that's conducted by people who have the proper training, of course. And, we never try to say that, working with us as coaches is a substitution for therapy, but at least what they are going to get is a couple of people who've lived the story and that have personal experiences that they can share with and feel comfortable sharing their personal stories because we've shared our personal stories. So it's just hitting things a little bit differently for people. And it's in a resource that for people who don't like to talk about their problems, they can read this book and get a little bit of help or get even just spun in a good direction, kind of a where their north could be, where a good place to start. Even in our website, which just launched, which is suffertotougher.org, we talk about the fact that the book is like the initial resource. Like that's what you want to start with. And then, we offer other programs and community type stuff, events, ways that they can connect with us. But it starts with the book. Read the book, have that, and then use that to create talking points, and then come talk to us. We're easy to find.
Yeah, for everything Kelsey, I want to echo everything Kelsey said. It says right in the book, very early in the book, we're focusing on progress, not perfection. We want to make steps in the right direction. And the biggest thing is, and Justin, we've talked about this so much, it's, yeah, you have AA, yeah, you got your dual diagnosis support group at NAMI, yeah, you're visiting with your therapist. But the issue is that's an hour, maybe 2 hours of a given day. And some days you might not have any of that going on. But what are you going to do, during the other 22 hours a day? Or what are you going to do with that day where you don't have anything on the calendar? Because there's things that you need to do to, one, stay sober, if you need to stay sober because you got the addiction side, either on the alcohol or substances. And two, keep your mental health in check and have a good mental health day. And we've talked about this about habits that become rituals that become a habits that become a lifestyle, and that's really what the book is focusing on: is trying to create those daily rituals or daily disciplines that's eventually going to become a habit, and that habit is going to become a lifestyle. Once it becomes a lifestyle, it's going to be second nature to them. It's just something that they're going to be doing on a daily basis, but it's going to be so beneficial, not only on the mental health side and the sobriety side, but also on the physical health side as well. It's all encompassing.
Definitely. And as you're kind of talking about this, about just these changes and how you can kind of take this, you can apply this, you can take these steps and kind of, I know Mitch was earlier kind of like alluding to, like, this book was really put together for somebody who's kind of been there or who's currently in it. And so who would you guys kind of say is your target audience for this book that you would say, hey, this is something you can get in your hands and right away you can start to get some of these take-home messages that could be helpful for you on your journey?
I feel like that is the beauty of Mark and I coming together as two authors to create this book, because we come from two different perspectives. So that way this book actually could help anybody that has suffered or is suffering. I mean, obviously, hence the name of the book, Suffer to Tougher. If you are going through something and need to find a guide, a guidebook or a roadmap to how to feel better, how to get it from where you are now to where you want to be, it's your first steps. And I think that could fit anybody who's going through any kind of mental illness or just a tough time, as I try to talk about the difference between being depressed and suffering from depression. And obviously you can speak to that better than I can, Justin, but in the moment, it kind of feels like the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, you could be depressed. You don't necessarily suffer from chronic depression, but you could just be having a really bad day, and picking up this book can just remind you of, like, hey, A, it's not that bad. B, there's things you can do that can help you to feel better. And then, see, you can get support from people like Mark and I, or in your community very easily, just by being willing to open up and not to lean into the shame factor of feeling bad. There's nothing to be ashamed of. We all have bad days. We all have things that get us down. But reading a book like this, and Mark with Mr. jacked up guns over there, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to look at him and think, man, that's a guy that should really be ashamed of showing some emotion. No, he's a dude's dude, and so if he says, hey, I've gone through rough times, and I'm here to tell you it's okay. It's okay to have rough times. It's okay to feel bad. We're just going to do something that's going to help make you feel a little bit better.
Yeah. And like for my, I mean, I don't want people to think it's all about addiction, or substances or alcohol. I think it's anybody going through a trying time in life, Justin. I mean, it could be a job situation. It could be financial stress. Lord knows we got a lot of financial stress going on out there right now. People are having a tough time. Relationship stress. Look at the divorce rate in this country. Maybe strained relationship with kids. Because, a lot of that stuff, if you don't know how to cope in a healthy way and you're not doing things to stay healthy, that could lead you down that path of addiction or alcoholism. And also, if you actually adopt some of these principles and some of these rituals when you're going through just a tough time in life, okay, that will help you, one, recover and feel better about the situation, but also, two, most likely probably prevent you from going down a darker path, deeper path, and it might prevent you from hitting the rock bottom like I hit the. I mean, what I just said is everything that happened to me, and look what happened to me. We all know my story.
No, and I love the fact you're kind of like saying, hey, we all go through hard times, we all go through pain. And what we know about people as people is the fact that we naturally, when we experience something that is painful, we want to get away from it. We want to try and push it away. And it sounds like this book is really kind of saying, hey, we know, lived and true, that approach is not effective. That doesn't promote healing. That actually feeds the very thing that we're trying to get away from. And so this book, in a sense, is kind of carrying some tools and these resources that can help people learn and address that very pain in a different way than they historically have, is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. I mean, life is going to be pain. You're going to have painful moments in life.
Mm-hmm.
And you can let the pain break you, or you can let the pain shape you. And for a long time, I let it break me because I really didn't know any better. And I didn't recognize early signs, and I went down that addiction path. But you live, you learn. I learned through the school of hard knocks. Hopefully, the book prevents somebody from going through the school of hard knocks. Okay. And as a result, all the pain that I went through ended up shaping me. And quite frankly, it shaped me to a human being that when I look in the mirror now, I'm proud of the individual that I see. I really am. And honestly, I'm more proud of myself now than even the pre addiction Mark. I'm just a much better, much humble, just all around human being as a result of going through the trials and tribulations of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with what Mark said when he kind of talks about, hopefully people learn some things from the book so they don't have to go through the same kind of struggles that we did. In that way, our book is kind of like our child, where you try and keep your kids from making the same mistakes you did. And hopefully they can learn from your past mistakes and you can, head them off at the pass and that sort of thing. That really is kind of what we're trying to do with this book. And we've had some younger people, actually a young entrepreneurs club that all bought copies of the books. They got together, and for their whole meeting on a particular week, they just sat around and talked about the book and about how the book affected them and what kind of lessons they learned from it and how it's going to help shape their future, which, I mean, was just so incredible for Mark and I to hear about that. And they actually have us going out there to speak for them. And it's just been an incredible experience to know that the book is already affecting people that way.
That's incredible, especially kind of having that kind of reach into that. Like, that's fantastic. And so you're kind of talking about like just how this is being applied, how this is helping and being of service to people really in their time of need. What do you think kind of sets your guys' book apart from other books on similar topics here?
Well, from my experience, you got two dudes that friggin' lived it
Mhm.
and pretty deep into it with very different types of addictions. He had a mountain to climb, and I had a mountain to climb. And through the proven methods in the book, we were able to climb it. And like you talked about before, Justin, I mean, that gentleman that spoke at the hospital, that was an addict in recovery, I I I I I, I, I caught on right away. Just the terminology he was using and the verbiage he was using, you can tell this dude gets it. He's got street creds. He's got the school of hard knocks, like I said. He lived it. He got his way out of it. And I had so much respect for him to the point where when I approached him afterwards, really at the lowest point in my life, I would do anything after hearing him speak for 45 minutes that gentleman told me to do because I wanted to get out of it so bad, and he knew how to get out of it. And I did. I listened. And as a result, I was in that hospital as a result of a major overdose. And that day that I overdosed was the last day that I used drugs and drank alcohol. And I would have never guessed that in a million years. But that's how much influence he had over me. So if we can have, honestly, a fraction of that influence, okay, on certain people, the book's a success.
That's incredible. That's fantastic. And so as you're kind of talking, Kelsey, anything you'd like to add, man?
Yeah, it's kind of funny how things developed because I mean, I certainly never try to take credit for the name of the Suffer to Tougher. That was Marc's baby before I ever even got involved. But just I had some ideas on how we could expand his concept of Suffer to Tougher. But I tell people Suffer to Tougher is a movement. It's basically a way for people to acknowledge where they're at and to take steps moving forward to be their best self, just like Marc has done. So Suffer to Tougher started with Marc himself. He suffered a lot, and he said, you know what? I've gotten as low as I'm going to allow myself to get, and it's time to climb, clawing, and to get myself out of this and to become the kind of person that is going to create opportunities, not for myself, but for other people in this world that can benefit from my experience. And then if they do that, then all the suffering that I personally went through will at least have been worth it. And that's what's really touched me from the beginning, from Marc's story and how Suffer to Tougher came to be, was just to know that it wasn't about just trying to make himself better. It was about trying to help other people to learn from his experiences and to find an easier path for themselves. And that's been amazing. I couldn't jump on board fast enough. But it definitely is a movement for people to, I mean, that's, like he's wearing the t-shirts. We have other people that approached him initially and said, hey, how do I get a t-shirt like that? He was only trying to get a t-shirt or two for himself, almost as a mantra to kind of remind himself. And then all of a sudden people are like, hey, what's that about? He explains the story. Everyone wants a t-shirt then. Everyone wants to have their own Suffer to Tougher story. And so that's what gravitated me towards it. But it's just been incredible, the response that we've gotten, and people that you don't even realize are seeing your posts, and all of a sudden you get a message from someone saying, hey, how do I get one of those t-shirts? It's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Marc and I being in the support group together, I mean, I used to joke with him like, man, you got to keep those stocked in your trunk. You got to open up a shop outside there at the end of the meeting. Just start pushing these t-shirts.
Hey, you know what, man? God's honest truth. I don't know if you're familiar with the Sammy Hagar story, but he's an entrepreneur. Okay, I mean he's a businessman. He wears his shirts all over the place. I mean the guy's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and he always wears his T-shirt. So you know what? It's his brand.
Yeah. Well, you know what we got to get is a T-shirt of Marc wearing a Suffer to Tougher T-shirt on the T-shirt. Like that's what.
Well, my goal is
That's
that we're expanding the merchandise, Justin. So we're going to have muscle T-shirts. Maybe I'll wear a muscle T-shirt.
That's not one that you're wearing right now?
No, it's a regular T-shirt.
I mean, it's actually extra baggy. My arms just fill it up. Can't help it.
Extra large too. Extra large too. Just so you know.
I'm sure it is. Yeah, probably double XL. Arms only.
Not quite a double X, but it's an extra large. It's not a large or medium or anything like that, like you always give me a hard time for. But going back to the name,
clothing.
I
Love
want,
it.
I want to I want to reiterate something about the name. Okay, so when I started being very open and honest and transparent on Facebook, and I became open, honest, and transparent after my cousin died of alcoholism in May of 2021. I said, I can't keep this a secret anymore, man, because I felt that if I was a little more open, honest, and transparent, maybe she would have came to me sooner for some guidance. But I still was dealing with some shame and guilt. That was really recovery. I mean, I was just under a year sober at that point, okay? And I decided to be open, honest, and transparent. I could not believe it. And I didn't come out and say, "Hey, I'm an alcoholic and drug addict in recovery." I just started posting some memes, but they were, if you can read between them, they were recovery memes, and I'm sure people put two and two together. And then all of a sudden, my Facebook Messenger started to explode. From people I went to high school with, from people that I worked in the past companies and so forth. And it got to the point early where like I needed some separation. So I'm like, I got to set up a recovery page on Facebook, and I'm not a really creative person, So originally, the original recovery page was a completely different name, and I'm like, oh man, that sounds too cheesy. And then I'm just sitting there one day, and it just came to me. I'm like, man, that makes sense, and that's how I created that Facebook page, and it just kind of expanded, But the amount of people that do reach out has expanded and grown as well, by being open, honest, and transparent. I think when I, I think because I'm bringing subject matter, or at least I was bringing subject matter to the table that some people find so sensitive to talk about, and I was just so open on. People felt comfortable coming to me, with issues in the household, whether it's with their kids, their spouse, themselves, or what have you. It really opened up my eyes. And Justin, we talked about this in a podcast over a year ago. When that started to happen, I felt even more comfortable in my own skin because I thought I was this rare bird. I thought I was this unique individual that went down this dark path. I thought I was like living on an island. And when I started talking to people and I found that this was very common as far as stuff going on in the household, I'm like, man, you know what? I'm not that different. I'm really not that different. This stuff is real, man.
Absolutely.
And thank God I'm out of it. Thank God I could try to live a life of service and try to help people.
Well, that's the difference. You say you're not that different, but you are, in the fact that
Well,
you want to talk about it because you want to make it so that people don't feel the anxiety of being able to discuss it. I mean, they're already dealing with enough because they're experiencing it, but then they have to deal with the shame of it. And you're making it so that people feel comfortable to come to you and talk to you, or to put their own posts out there. So you are different in that way, but you're hoping that one day you're not going to be so different, because it is going to be okay, and it's going to be easier for people to express those thoughts and those demons and to be able to deal with them in a more public way, because we're going to try to create an environment where it's more socially acceptable to say, hey,
yeah,
I got some problems, but I'm working through them.
Absolutely.
yeah, you're right. It's just like from my perspective, though, it was like I didn't really feel uncomfortable talking about it, quite frankly, because I've seen too many people die. One being my cousin, but a lot of people I know from the industry that I'm in and personal acquaintances and things like that. And I'm just like, enough's enough. Early on, it was like, if this means quote unquote public embarrassment by me getting my story out there, but it saves one person's life, it's worth all the embarrassment in the world. But what I've come to find out is that I feel like I get more respect in the from the recovery world and people that aren't even not part of the recovery world from me getting my story out there like this. That I feel I get more respect for this than I've ever got at any professional accomplishment that I got in the insurance industry. And I've won some awards in the insurance industry. I've been on some nice trips, but I've never felt respected like this. And I'm not doing it for that. It's just kind of weird. Just people do, I guess, admire or respect the fact that I can talk about things so openly. But I don't think I'm doing anything special. I think I'm just trying to help people.
I mean, it's that humility that people gravitate to, though.
I guess you're right.
And we're
Justin,
talking about something
Justin,
that's like, well, Marc, what was
is
that?
it you? You don't see it though. The humility. I'm
The
joking around.
humility, no. The
Medium shirt.
humility masked in a medium-sized T-shirt. Yeah.
There you go. Exactly. I was waiting for it.
Yeah. Oh, but I mean, we're kind of like you're shining a light on something that is highly stigmatized, right? And that people carry shame about. And then they feel shame about having shame. And so it becomes like this like self-defeating cycle that prevents it's like I just don't want to speak this into existence. And because the belief is that's going to just empower it or make it stronger. And what you're saying is like, hey, in order to kind of move past, we got to move through. And we can acknowledge where we've been and what we've done. And just because maybe I haven't done or shown up in the best way I would like to show up in this world doesn't mean I have to hold myself, back from being the best version of me now. I don't have to continue to punish myself for my mistakes of my past, right? And I think when we talk about, suffer to tougher, it's like there's this adage I heard like years ago, and it's kind of stuck with me, right? Like, pain is temporary, but suffering is optional, right? It's the idea of like, how long am I going to beat myself down over mistakes, over things that I did wrong, or the idea that I sold myself short or I let other people down? And so, big part of this, I imagine, as you guys were kind of putting this together and formulating a way that people could just pick it up and go, is that idea of like forgiveness coming through too, like that self-forgiveness piece. So if you guys could talk a little bit about just the power of that in this process of healing that you all found, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole idea behind normalizing the way that people feel, positive, negative. How you feel is how you feel, but it doesn't necessarily have to define you. It's just a moment in time. If you're always working, they call it the Kaizen principle. Don't know if you've heard of it before, but basically it's just the principle behind always trying to strive for self-improvement. Whether you want to call it the 1% better every day. I mean, we all hear that adage, but just the fact that it's, it's not about keeping yourself stuck in the past. Don't try to avoid the past like as if it never happened, because there are too many learning opportunities there to not reflect on it. But that allows you to actually understand the accomplishment that you're making when you're going through it. Like Marc being able to reflect back to the type of person that he was 5 years ago versus the type of person he is now. If he didn't acknowledge his low points of back then, he wouldn't be able to recognize how far he's come. And he probably wouldn't think that he was the right guy to help lead people towards lasting better change. He would, so acknowledging where you were and not feeling guilty about it, but using it as an opportunity, I think is something that we definitely strive to communicate throughout the book, for sure.
Yeah, and I think you have to have acceptance. I believe in making amends. I believe in working through resentments. I believe in working through that shame and guilt. But at the end of the day, you got to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, nothing matters except from this day on. Once you come to peace with all that stuff and you work through those resentments and so forth, and you make those amends, nothing matters from this day on. And for me, it was July 17th, 2020. That was my sober date, and my focus and my progress has been from that day on. I'm not comparing myself to anybody else except the person in the mirror. And the only thing I'm comparing myself to in regards to the person in the mirror is the person I was yesterday. And I want to be better today. Kind of that 1% thing Kelsey talked about. And tomorrow, God willing, I wake up, I'm going to look at that person in the mirror. My focus is to be better than that person in the mirror as I was yesterday. And just, again, progress, not perfection, trying to constantly make strides in the right direction to be just a better human being altogether, mentally, physically, spiritually. I just think that's so important. I mean, I do talk about 4 forms of fitness. I talked about it with the youth group. Everybody wants to focus on the financial fitness, right? Everybody wants to make money. Everybody's chasing money, chasing money, chasing money. Specifically when I talk to younger individuals in the hospital, Justin, and I tell them straight up, I'm like, listen, financial fitness is great, You can build this beautiful financial house, but if you don't have the foundation intact, which is your mental, physical, and spiritual fitness, that thing can come crashing down in a bad couple of years. And I'm not necessarily talking about alcohol addiction. It could be you develop some type of disease as a result of some lifestyle. Okay, just what you put in your food or lack of exercise, whatever it might be. Okay, and you get some type of physical sickness. I mean, from doing my day job, I talked to a dude that had $10 million net worth about 25 years ago, and his wife got sick with a very serious condition. And when she passed away, he had less than $50,000 in the bank. I mean, that happens. It happens every single day. Some of it's preventable, some of it's not preventable. I get that. I understand that. But to try to put yourself in the best position to succeed and be a human being, you got to have that foundation intact. And people do it half-ass backwards. Okay, we focus on our financial first, and then we want to get better over here. No, you got to focus on the physical, the mental, the spiritual. Put that foundation in place, and then build the financial from there. Because again, I'll use me as an example. I had a beautiful home. I was making good money. I had good money in the bank. I had a decent amount of money in my 401k. Where did it all go? Gone. Because I wasn't tending to my physical needs and my mental health needs. I was chasing the mighty dollar. I did everything backwards. That's what when I talk to younger individuals, I tell them that straight up.
Powerful message. And so I'm going to ask you guys a question that, I mean, ideally, nobody in this world just has time to read one chapter, and only one chapter of your book. But in the strange universe that people only had the opportunity to read one single chapter from your book, what chapter would you direct them to read or encourage them to take the time to set aside to?
Actually, it's kind of funny. I had a client of mine that came to me, and he had just started reading the book, and he said that literally the preface was the best preface of any book he had ever read before, because it set the stage, it got him excited, it made him feel motivated, and he was like, I can't wait to read the rest. So honestly, starting at the beginning and just to find out what this book is, what this book isn't, what you can expect. And, obviously we're hoping that it, kind of whets your appetite for wanting to just keep trudging through it. But if nothing else, when you read from the very first page, this is a book that is going to be powerful and it's going to help you in some way. And that's a resource that you can hold on to for life.
Got a story about that, Justin. So there's a gentleman that him and I know that owns a hair salon here in the western suburbs. He's been telling me, he said, it's unbelievable, Mark, because, he's been doing this for 40 plus years. And, he hears everything about what's going on at home from his clients. Okay. And he says he's been seeing the wave build up, where his clients are talking about their husband or their children or whatever it might be. So the book came out. He bought 10 copies, okay, because he was going to hand them out to some of his customers that he knew got some issues going on in the household, right? And some lady comes in, she's doing her hair, and she starts talking about her son. And been a client of his for a long time, but never really talked about his son this way. So he did the hair, put her under the blow dryer, and says, I'm going to give you a book that my friends wrote. He goes, I just want you to read a little bit of it while you're waiting to get your hair dry. And she started with the preface, and he starts doing some other stuff. He looks, and she's like crying. And he runs over there to see what's going on. And she says, this describes my son exactly.
Hmm.
And she started getting emotional under the hairdryer. And there's been a few of those stories, but that one really hit me because when the gentleman told me that, he was getting emotional while he was explaining to me what happened with his client.
Absolutely. It's an incredible message. And I think that's just like the power of the story and what you guys were able to kind of craft, create, and kind of put in a digestible amount here to the public for them to kind of, take this message and apply it to themselves and see how this can benefit them and empower them in their lives. And so Kelsey, Marc, I appreciate you guys, taking the time to be here to share with us the insights and wisdom that's kind of wrapped up in this Suffer to Tougher book that you guys were able to create here. And so, as always, I just want to say thanks everybody for taking the time to hear about the story and the book that Marc and Kelsey were able to create, that you can pick up off of Amazon. It's accessible there. And it's definitely, as you heard some of the testimonials today and kind of what went into making it well worth your time to kind of spend that time hearing what they have to offer.
I got an announcement, Justin.
I'm on the edge of my seat, Marc.
Well, you're wrapping it up, right, for the podcast?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next podcast is going to be September 15th. But for the audience, you're not going to see Justin's pretty face and my old face with the gray hairs and my beard. Okay, because on September 15th, we actually got a special treat for you. We got a different type of podcast. Okay, we actually have two of our incredible family-to-family teachers that are going to be sharing their story and their journey as they how they supported loved ones, okay, in their household or in their family that are dealing with mental health conditions. And they're also going to talk about the family to family program and the tools and the work that they do inside the community to support family members that have individuals in the household that are struggling on the mental health side as well. So it's a topic that we have not talked in the 2 years or 2+ years we've been doing the podcast. They're the experts. They're the ones that actually facilitate the classes. So they're going to be the special guest, and they're going to be doing the podcast on September 15th. And then on September 30th, we'll get to see Justin's pretty face again.
And by that day, I really hope Marc has been visited by the sleeve monster. He is a beautiful cutoff. But what Marc is alluding to and referencing there, it's a powerful conversation about connection, education, and the strength that comes from community. If you or someone you know has ever felt alone on this path, you won't want to miss it. And then, again, we'll be back on the 30th. So until then, everybody, thank you as always for listening. Kelsey and Marc, thank you both for being here to share your expertise and your wisdom and the great book that you have created to kind of really help change and support people on their path. So until next time, everybody, thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining us today on Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. If you're on the journey to find guidance and insights, subscribe now wherever you find your podcasts. Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery is an educational resource, not a substitute for medical or therapeutic advice. The opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are not necessarily those of NAMI DuPage. Go to namidupage.org/podcast for links to past episodes, show notes, and to submit a question or topic ideas for a future episode. Until next time, be well.